Hey GBA fans, it's your friend Choice CJ here, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys my Week 7 battle for Season 4 of D-League. Of course, our opponent this week is Leo, coach of the Durham Druddigons, and if you're familiar with the Draft League community, you're most likely familiar with Leo. He is, very talented player, very well known, one of the biggest names in the community, has a few championships to his name, I think UCL Season 2 and this most recent season of APA. He just won both of those, and he's made finals in TBU, and just has been a very good competitor. Obviously, he won GBA D-League Season 3, the most recent season. Was able to beat Randy there, so he's very decorated, and so it's really great to have the opportunity to play him. Really looking forward to it, and even more than having the opportunity to play him, because he is so well known. It's fun to get the chance to play him because Leo and I have had the chance to, become friends over the course of this season. We talk a lot. We play a lot of Fortnite together, so it's pretty fun. It's more fun when you get to play friends, right? Like, it's not as rewarding when you get to just battle people for the sake of battling. And that's what's been great about this season as a whole. The game versus Greg was a lot of fun because he's someone I've known for quite a while, and things like that. So it's cool to be in a league where you get along with everybody. But anyway, enough about that. Let's break down this matchup and then quickly hop into the battle. Leo's team is Whimsicott, Zygarde 10, Infernape, Zoroark, Mega Medicham, Miltank, Rotom Frost, Cresselia, Nidoqueen, Magearna, and Almamola. Those are not the order in which he drafted them, that's just the order based on speed. And so he has a ton of threats, obviously number one being Magearna. Magearna is a team that not many, it's hard to have good checks to Magearna just because it has great coverage, it can run a variety of sets, and it's hard to take into account all of them, so that's definitely an issue. Definitely very scary. He has lots of really great wall breakers versus my team, like Medicham, just with fighting plus ice coverage, pops my entire team. Because my main switch-ins to it being Gligar, Latios, and Celebi all get destroyed by Ice Punch, so pretty hard to deal with. The Zygarde that's there is very scary. I definitely got crushed by Melon's Zygarde 50 earlier in the season. The nice thing, of course, is that Zygarde 10 doesn't have nearly as much bulk, so it's not gonna be as hard to deal with it as Zygarde 50 was, because I can feel like I can, try and do damage to it with mons that I have. With that Zygarde 50, my Celebi, even if I went for HP Ice, I wasn't going to do nearly enough damage to it to prevent it from setting up. But Zygarde 10, I can more reasonably prevent setting up by actually doing good damage to it. But all in all, it's a really tough team to deal with. He's got tons of annoying things like Cress and Whimsicott, Zoroark. He's used Zoroark really well this season. So it's going to be an uphill battle, but we've got a reasonable team. I would describe it as a semi-stall team. We're going to see how that's going to work. I know that it's sort of dangerous to bring a semi-stall team versus a team with Mega Medicham and just other good wall breakers. But I think it's going to work surprisingly well because a lot of my mons can't get statused, or at least they can't get toxic. So for example, my lead mon, or my first mon on the team this week, is Komala, Wish Protect, Toxic, Earthquake. So, in theory, this beats a lot of his team, as long as they don't have, Substitute. So, Wish Protect allows me to keep Komala at a good amount of health. It also allows me to heal up a lot of my team, which is important for a couple of different mons that I'll point out here in just a moment. Toxic wears everything down, and the only thing that it really doesn't hit is Magearna, and we do have the Earthquake to hit Magearna for a decent bit of damage. Spread here is just fully Spadef. This is kind of my best way to take damage from things like Rotom, potentially Cresselia, even Nidoqueen. To some extent, this can kind of switch in on if it's a specially attacking Nidoqueen. I know that physically attacking Nidoqueen is also a big threat, but we'll have to sort of see how that one shakes out. But yeah, Komala, I think, is actually pretty decent here. Yes, Medicham is scary versus it, and Infernape is scary versus it, but if it's Nape, there's a decent chance that it's a choice Nape, and then I can go for Protect, scout what he wants to go for, and then go into the appropriate mon. Protect versus a high jump kicking Medicham is obviously good for me, because it might make him crash and take 50% damage, so that would be quite nice. And yeah, the fact that he can't Toxic this means that it can be very annoying for him. Like, he's going to have a hard time wearing me down unless he's got the ability to set up versus me. If he does want to set up versus me, then we can just sort of Toxic and Protect and wear him down, and that's not a huge deal. Got another Mon with Toxic this week. We've got a Suicune set with Toxic and Calm Mind. Mental Herb is the item on here to deal with Encore Whimsicott if he chooses to bring that. It's just kind of a cheeky way to go, because he'll, obviously try and, screw me over by Encoring me, but then we can bop it with Ice Beam. And this isn't going to do, it's not going to like one-shot with Ice Beam from +1 versus Whimsicott. But it should do a reasonable chunk of damage. Like, if he's it's just a max HP set, it does like 72 or 73% from +1. So if I get up rocks and he has to take a little bit of chip, which he reasonably might be from like my Gligar and my Latios, he won't be at max HP, so there's a good chance that we can bop him there. I could have run like Hidden Power Poison or something like that, but I liked Ice Beam just for the ability to switch into Zydog and immediately take it out. Like, Scald does an okay amount of damage, but not a ton. This does, what, 360 damage versus Scald doing 120. So it's just a much, much bigger power output versus Zygarde, which is definitely a spooky Mon. So if I can get rid of a lot of his like really big wall breakers, I think that Kun can put in the work, because it's like his team is weirdly fast, but without something like Rotom or Whimsicott, like this set is sort of designed to beat Whimsicott. But so then otherwise, like if he doesn't have Rotom, he's gonna have a hard time killing this. And if I can get up rocks, Rotom becomes easier to deal with. Next, I have my third Toxic Mon, which is pretty wild. But it is Gligar, Rocks, Roost, Toxic, and Earthquake. So this is sort of the same idea as the Komala. Like, it can't get Toxic. Oh, I had the wrong ability. That's kind of annoying. But anyway, the thought was with immunity we would not be able to get Toxic, but apparently I had Hypercutter the whole time. So whoops, didn't really play into the match. We are gonna hop into the match in just a moment. But this set is again equally hard for him to deal with, except for the mons that have ice coverage. He just doesn't have a very good way of dealing with this. And with Toxic and EQ, we can hit basically his entire team. This defense investment allows us to take 2 high jump kicks after rocks from Medicham, I believe. I think that's the reason for that. And then we just put, basically the rest into Spadef, a tiny bit into speed, in case he's creeping me somehow. So getting up rocks is going to be a really big priority for me, just because, punishing switches is going to be pretty important, of course, as it always is. Next, we have a bulky Mega Lottie. This is my best switch-in for things like Infernape, Nidoqueen. Those are the main things, like especially Infernape. What else was there that I really wanted to switch in on? Aloe, it switches in pretty well on. Things like that. And also, to some extent, Rotom. Like, obviously, ice moves are scary, especially if he's Ice Z, but we'll have to see if he, like, predicts me coming. Like, if I've got Suicune in versus Rotom or something, like, we'd have to determine, is it likely that he's going to try and make a prediction or not. Because he could just go for Volt Switch, or he could predict and go for the Ice move, which would be spooky again. But, yeah, it's mainly just my pivot for Infernape. And it's also a pivot for Mega Medicham, I should say. Like, this is kind of the best response I have. I could have brought Celebi. Celebi is maybe a tiny bit bulkier because it's got a better HP stat. But it doesn't have the offensive output that Lottie has. Like, it can't really counter. Like, it can switch in, but then it can't threaten Medicham like Lottie can. So, yeah, mainly dealing with the fighting types, but then it can also pivot in on things like Nidoqueen and Alamamole and stuff like that. Next set, this is one of my favorite sets of the week. It's an Assault Vest Darmanitan. This is the way that I'm going to deal with Magearna, because it doesn't really get a great coverage move for hitting Darm. Its double stabs, of course, are resisted. With an Assault Vest, like even like a +1 Floor Cannon or something isn't doing over 50% to us. So getting this thing, like keeping this thing healthy is going to be extremely important. Making sure that rocks stay off my side of the field is going to be extremely important. because that's going to allow my Duranitan to actually check Magearna. If it's at like 50% or lower, then I'm going to start to really worry about it. But otherwise, this actually just applies a lot of pressure to his team in general, because we can hit things like Miltank super effectively with Superpower. What is his water type? Aloe. Like, Aloe is just very easy to U-turn out of. Then we can go into Komala, since that thing cannot Toxic us, of course. Yeah, it just seems like a very, very sturdy Mon this week. We don't need a lot of attack investment in order to threaten a lot of his team, so that's what we've got with a lot of Spadef. And, you know, we put a lot of it into Spadef, one, because it combos well with the Assault Vest, and two, Duranitan already has a high enough HP stat that you get more value out of investing in the Spadef. So, like this Mon this week. And then last but not least, I have a Sword Stance Drapion. Sword Stance is not necessarily to act as a win condition, although it can. It's mainly so that I have a way of, like, breaking through bulky Cresselias. Like, that's the #1 reason that I brought this Drapion, is because I want something to be able to respond to Cresselia. Because you look at the first 5 Mons on my team, and you gotta think that, like, a Rest Talk Cresselia would just completely crush me. And then I also wanted something to be able to switch into Zoroark. I don't have a Dark Resist on the team up to this point, so Drapion works in that way. And the triple coverage that this Mon has is pretty nice. If I could have dropped one of the coverage moves and put on, like, Agility, that would have been amazing, but it wasn't really going to work this week, because I needed, like, if I don't have Poison Jab, I can't hit Whimsicott particularly hard. If I don't have Knockoff, I can't deal with Cress. Earthquake's needed, so I'm not walled by Magearna. So, could be very good, but we'll have to see. So that's the team, guys. Let's now swap on over to the battle. And Leo's decided to bring his Mega Medicham, his Rotom Frost, his Miltank, his Cresselia, his Magearna, and his Nidoqueen. So, not any major surprises. I guess Rotom, perhaps, is the most surprising thing, but it makes sense. Like, the Bolt Beam stabs, you know, or practically having Bolt Beam stabs, it has Blizzard instead of Ice Beam, but just Electric plus Ice is hard for any team to deal with, and my team is no exception. Unless you have something like Lantern or Alolan Marowak or something like that, it's just a very good offensive combination. So it makes sense, even though it's like not necessarily one of the ones I was most expecting. I'm really relieved not to see Zygarde. Like, Zygarde I thought was a huge threat versus my team, like I said, because it destroyed me in week 4. So that not being here is nice. And Fernape not being there is good. It's going to be a little bit easier for me to deal with his team. He's not going to be able to get as much momentum on me, because his only Mons with momentum are potentially Volt Switch on Rotom and Baton Pass on Medicham. And the no Whimsicott means that my Mental Herb Suicune is a little bit less useful. That's kind of the problem, right, with running these, like, specialized sets, is that if your opponent doesn't bring a particular Mon, it doesn't quite work out. You can ask OP Jelson about that in our week 1 match. He brought that really specialized Manaphy set, and he's been getting teased a lot for that this season. He would have looked a lot smarter if I brought Suicune. Like, it was a really cool set, but it just is too big of a risk a lot of the time. At least my Coon, I think, is not ruined by the fact that Whimsicott is not there. Like, he can still do Calm Mind shenanigans and Toxic a lot of his team. Yeah, in general, like, his squad is looking pretty Toxic weak. And even if he wants to bring a Magearna on a Toxic, both of my Mons, like pretty much all my Mons that are trying to spam Toxic still have ways to deal with Magearna. Like, Coon can set up versus it and go for Scalds and do good damage, and my Gligar and my Komala can go for Earthquake versus it, which is nice. So in terms of leads, I like leading with Lottie because it leads off very well versus pretty much everything. Maybe not Rotom, that's probably the only thing it leads bad versus. Magearna is not great, but, you know, we can go for Earthquake versus that thing. Mainly, like, if there's a bunch of Mons that, if he leads with them, I'm not going to have a response for. Like, if he leads, like, Medicham, at least Lottie can punish that immediately. Whereas if I have anything else in, like, I'm kind of screwed. So I don't want to get punished by, like, a lead Medicham, for example. So I'm going to lead my Lottie, and it allows me to Mega Evolve immediately and get off a lot of bulk and things like that. So let's click Start. I wish good luck, have fun to Leo, and we're going to do our very best to catch this W. So I am going to lead Latios, like I said. And lucky for me, the lead matchup works out because he does end up leading with his Medicham. And so I'm not expecting him to want to stay in here. I'm expecting to switch into the Magearna, so I do choose to click Earthquake here as I get off my Mega Evolution. And as you see, he is staying in himself, and he's going to get off a Mega Evolution as well. So this is going to give me some really important information on Medicham, you know, figure out what sort of set it is. I go for the Earthquake, and I'm very surprised to see that this does like 20, maybe 25%. And then this Ice Punch comes out, and it does a lot of damage, but it only does 120. So this is actually a uninvested Medicham. It has no attack investment. It has almost full Fizz Def investment. And in retrospect, it makes a lot of sense because it's his best way of dealing with my Terrakion. Terrakion does kind of go in on his team, and I came really close to bringing it, but I put the Drapion instead last minute, so that way I did have a better way of dealing with Crest, like I explained. So anyway, there's a couple of switches here. He goes into Mag, and then doubles back into his Medicham. As I bring in my Darm is the dedicated Magearna response, as I explained. And because I know that he's so like physically defensive, I can outspeed with my Darmanitan and go for U-turn. I go into my Gligar to take that, and then double into my Suicune, expecting the Ice Punch. Or, expecting the Ice Punch, but then he's going to go ahead and show the Recover. So this set is really masterful, honestly. Like, just the fighting coverage, plus Ice, plus Recover. It just makes it so good versus my team. It makes it such a good Terrakion answer. We're not sure what's in the last slot, but it's most likely Bullet Punch in order to deal with the Terrakion, like I said. So anyway, I go for a Toxic here, hoping that he might just want to go for high jump kick damage on my Suicune, because like I said, he's looking, his Medicham's looking really spooky. I don't have a lot of great ways to handle it, because my Lottie is a little bit low, and yeah, so that's pretty annoying. So I do switch out of my my Suicune versus that Rotom, and I go into my Belowski, because it's pretty specially defensive, and it can probably deal with almost anything that Rotom wants to go for. And I'm just going to throw off a Wish here. He does get a crit with the Body Slam, which is a little bit annoying, but it's not going to put me in range of a second Body Slam, and I can heal up, and he's going to go for a Heal Bell to restore his Rotom. And so seeing the Heal Bell really stinks, because it kind of ruins a lot of my strategy. It's true that he only has 8 Heal Bells, but it's just going to make this match a lot harder, because I can't just sort of stall everything out, because he's got to have the opportunity to keep everything pretty healthy with this Miltank. And of course Miltank is going to be running Milk Drink, and that's going to make this thing hard to wear down as well. Like, if it was a Mon that had Heal Bell but no Recovery, I could eventually wear down that Mon. But I really am going to have to, like, if I want to try and Toxic Stall everything, I need to get this thing out of, Heal Bells. So anyway, on this turn, I'm thinking he might go for a Heal Bell or a Recovery move, so I figure this is the best chance I have to heal up Lottie. He does go for Body Slam, which, you know, it sort of mitigates the Wish that I'm going to receive. I only gain, like, 40 points versus what I started with, and more unfortunately, I get parried. And so, getting parried here really stinks, because that basically means that this has no value as a switch in to make a Medicham, because even if I switch in on a predicted high jump kick, he can then immediately just kill me with Ice Punch since he outspeeds. So that really stinks. You know, and he makes a couple of nice switches here. He switches into Magearna on my Draco. I really wanted to try and pressure that Miltank, because like I said, if I can just kill it, then my Toxic strategy works a little bit better. But he switches in on that, and then on my Earthquake, he switches into his physically defensive Medicham. And I decide there's no value in preserving my my Lottie at that point. I let it go down to the Ice Beam. Or not the Ice Beam, the Ice Punch. So anyway, my Suicune comes in here, and I'm sorry that the game is lagging just a little bit, but he is going to switch on out, and he's going to go into his Rotom, which has now been healed. And I go for a Scald, because he doesn't really have a Scald switch, and to be honest, it's pretty nice. And we do land to burn. Not a huge deal on something like Rotom. In fact, getting the Toxic off would be a little bit better. But, you know, every little bit of chip damage onto this Rotom is good. So I don't want to switch into my Komala because it's a little bit weakened. I'd rather get my Komala in on a free switch and try and do a Wish Protect. And so Darmanitan is sort of my best way to switch into T-Bolt. You know, based on my investment, it does look like that's a fully specially attack invested Rotom. And I am expecting the Miltank switch in here. I could have gone for U-turn, but just in case he's Rocky Helmet, which he could be, he hasn't shown an item up to this point. I didn't want to take the chip damage on Darmanitan, so I decided to double instead and go into Gligar. And hoping that he would go for Heal Bell, I finally go for my Rocks here. And so Rocks is good. It whittles down the team quite a bit, so that Rotom's going to be taking 25% upon switch in. This Miltank takes a decent bit of chip upon switch in. And I'm going to continue to go with my Toxic strategy here. He's now used a couple heal bells, I think 2 or 3, which is good. And so here, like, we're kind of trying to predict when he might make a aggressive switch into his not to his Darmanitan, his Medicham. Here, we get a little bit of damage off on this Miltank, and get him to about 50% here. I think I clicked Toxic here, expecting him to either go for Heal Bell finally, or to go into the Medicham, and I think I clicked Toxic. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. So bummer that we didn't get that play correct. But yeah, just applying a lot of pressure with Toxic is working relatively well in this game. He is going to make a switch now into his Cresselia, as I go for Roost, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, you know, there was a good opportunity for him to go into Crest, because he probably wasn't expecting me to go for another Toxic after I messed up that first play. But my number 1 switch into this, of course, is my Drapion, and he's going to go for Ice Beam, and this actually does a chunk. It does like 57 HP, which suggests that this is max attack, but probably modest. So, very interesting Crest set. Definitely did not expect that. But I am going to go for a Swords Dance, because he is, you know, somewhat likely to switch out. He doesn't have a way to threaten me, like, unless he's packing like Hidden Power Ground or something. And then even that's not going to do that much more than the Ice Beam did. And if he makes a switch, like, based on like how his team is, like, I actually outspeed everything with Drapion, and so I could have gotten off enough damage, you know, or if I get a boost, I can do a lot of damage to his team. He decides to go into this Nidoqueen here. I get off an Earthquake, which does a lot, and lucky for me, he's actually a physically offensive, or physically attacking Nidoqueen. He's not offensively invested, but that's nice for me because, of course, Drapion's physical defense is much better than its special defense, so that Earthquake doesn't take me out, and I'm able to take out his Nidoqueen. I got a lot of damage onto my Drapion, but I felt like it was worth it because it seemed like the Nidoqueen was the rocker, and so basically trading HP on my Drapion for getting rid of Nidoqueen seemed worth it, so that way I could prevent rocks for the rest of the game. I go into my Coon because I'm kind of expecting the Bullet Punch, and I figured that it would take it relatively well. He instead goes for Ice Punch, then follows up with a crit High Jump Kick. So it's just funny, he got the crit on the Ice Punch and then the crit on the High Jump Kick there. Suicune luckily was still able to survive, and we got up the Scald. We were not able to fetch a burn. Getting a burn would be really nice there. And then this is a really pivotal turn. I bring in my Medicham, my Darmanitan, which is really my only way of killing Medicham at this point. And like, Leo's a very aggressive player, right? And so he knows that I know that Medicham is very valuable for him. And so, because he's like a pretty aggressive player, I thought he might leave his Medicham in. So it seemed worth it to go for Flare Blitz. He does make the play of going into Miltank, which was his safe play, but it seemed like based on the damage rolls that potentially my Darm actually could have 2-hit KO'd with the Flare Blitz. And I could have gone for Superpower instead, but based on the fact that he's not Leftovers and he's not Rocky Helmet, he's almost certainly Chople Berry. And so Flare Blitz and Superpower do basically an equivalent amount of damage. And then going for Superpower does give me that attack drop and that defense drop, so I'd rather just go for Flare Blitz. But the rolls didn't work out, and even though we do double down with the Miltank, he is going to be able to kill my Darmanitan with the EQ. And with my only Megairnet check now eliminated, he is going to bring it in immediately, hit it up with an EQ, and he gets his weakness policy, and he is going to go for a Trick Room. And ladies and gents, we are in trouble. I have 3 Mons left. He's got 4 turns to try and stall me out here. And yeah, he's gonna kill my Gligar, which is definitely a bummer. I'm going to go into my Komala and go for Protect. I guess basically I'm hoping to get a couple of turns of Protect and I can stall out his Trick Room. So I guess one thing I could have done in the endgame here is gone into my Komala. I went for this Protect. Now he only has 2 turns left. If I then sack my my Drapion, I can then go back into Komala, Protect again, and then it'll be Trick Room over. I can go for an Earthquake. I don't think he's in range of Earthquake from my Komala, just because it's not Stab and Komala's not that offensive. But then Komala could have potentially stalled out the rest of his team. The reason that I didn't do that is because I was still worried about like a substitute Cresselia. If he was sub Cresselia, then Komala definitely doesn't beat that. It turns out he was actually Scarf Cresselia, so turned out that that would have been my better play, because Komala can pretty easily beat Scarf Cresselia, I would say, once it gets off a Toxic, because then it can just Wish Protect for forever. It just would have been hard to hit the Medicham. Like, we would have to get the 50-50 correct versus the Medicham trying to get off a Protect versus the high jump kick. But I don't think there is any way that, like, even if we got off a Toxic, like, it was going to be really hard for us to Protect stall it out. So we end up with, I believe, a 4-0 loss, or was it a 3-0? No, it was a 3-0 loss, which is a bummer. Like, this big mistake there, of course, was having the Darmanitan go down to Miltank. I should have just U-turned out. I could have easily U-turned into Komala, because Miltank couldn't beat Komala, because I had Wish Protect and I had Toxic. So that would have been a safer play. I just felt like, you know, it was worth the risk. Clearly it was not. And there are a few other turns there that we could have played better. Like, it was kind of unnecessary to switch in my Lottie versus that Miltank. Even though, like, there was a reasonable chance that he went for either a Heal Bell or a Milk Drink, or he potentially switched into his Medicham. Those are all things that were likely, or, you know, not likely, but those are all things that were possible, but he ended up making the Body Slam play, and then it was really unfortunate to get hit by the Para on that, which is a fairly high chance to happen with Body Slam. It is 30%, of course, but, you know, it is what it is. All in all, though, like, I don't think it was a bad game. Like, it stinks to get swept to my Magearna. That's not the first time that's happened to me. Like, I let my Magearna counter go down, and then I immediately get swept to my Magearna. That happened to me in P4G Next Generation versus my good buddy Johnny GB. So that stunk, but, you know, like, I think otherwise it was an okay game. Like, made some good reads, was able to weaken a lot of his team. I was able to prevent rocks from going up. That Drapion almost put in a lot of work there. I wonder, actually, if I had gone for a second Swords Dance, if I might have been in a better position to win the game. Because, like, I knew because it was a Fizz Def Medicham that my Drapion wasn't going to be able to take it out with a Poison Jab at +2. But if I went for +4 and then survived that Nidoqueen's EQ, I could have gone for the Earthquake and, like, pretty much finished off the team. But I couldn't have known that that was what was going to happen. And actually, that wouldn't have worked, because he'd come with Medicham, go for a Bullet Punch just to get off some chip on me, and then he can go into his Scarf Crest and Revenge Kill me that way. So, like, yeah, Drapion was good, but it wasn't going to be able to win the game at that point. So, just like I said, it was an uphill battle based on team matchup. But, you know, I'm not trying to take anything away from Leo when I say that. Like, he had a really good game plan. The Medicham set was perfect. The Magearna set was perfect. The Miltank, apparently that was a last-minute addition with the Heal Bell. That really hurt my plan quite a bit, because this team would have been a whole lot easier to wear down if everything was Toxic and I had up rocks and he was dancing around and stuff. So, it's unfortunately going to mean our 5th loss in a row in the GBA. But as long as the games are fun, like, it's not that upsetting to me. Like, yes, I'm eliminated from playoffs, not literally, but practically. But as long as I get to have good games versus my friends, I'm pretty satisfied. So, was hoping to make a bigger dent into the D-League, but, you know, I'm just trying to focus on enjoying myself, and I think I'm doing that. So, we are going up against AA Run 2 for 20 next week, and that's going to be a good one. He's kind of in the same boat as me, where he's been on a little bit of a slide, but hopefully we can have a good match with him. He's a real nice guy. So, hope you guys are looking forward to that. If you are, make sure you leave a like and a sub down below, and you can check back to my channel for all sorts of other gaming Pokemon content. So, until the next time, I'll see you guys later.